All right, welcome viewers. Here we have the great Gary Taylor. Gary, we just have a few questions for you. We know a little bit about your situation. Do you mind walking us through what happened, starting with maybe the store you wanted to purchase?
Yeah, I'll just preface this by saying it is a bit of a long story, but I'll try to keep it concise enough. So yeah, I was patrolling one day. I was working in the LSPD at the time, um, patrolling around the Chumash area, uh, and at the time, so was Detective Guillermo Tavares, which is the butt of this story. Um, Detective Tavares came up to me in his cruiser and he asked me if I want to go half and half in the purchase of a store with him because at the time he could not afford to buy it himself. The store was $5 million, which luckily enough I could pay for myself. So I went into the store, saw that it was $5 million. After wanting a store for about 2 years myself, I saw the opportunity to, take ownership of one. And at the time, for many reasons, I did not want to be business partners with Detective Tavares. At the time, I did respect him professionally, but I felt that on a personal level, um, he just wouldn't be suitable. I felt like we just wouldn't get along in terms of business decisions and whatnot. So I decided to purchase the store myself, offering Alex Servanis, who was my best friend, a chance to go half and half in the store with me instead, because I knew that we would work well together and the shop would, thrive under the management of both of us. With Servanis agreeing to that, I purchased the store, and since we were on duty at the time, I decided to go back to Mission Row and head off shift because obviously it wouldn't be appropriate to remain on shift while sorting out the affairs of the store. The affairs being business registration and licensing and whatnot. So I made my way back to the store after going off shift, and upon my arrival, I saw Detective Tavares was there waiting. Um, he approached me and confronted me about something that, while I don't regret it, it was detrimental to the termination of my employment in the LSPD. He confronted me about a firearms license removal request, for, relating to me, which he had dug up on the government website after he had searched my name in spite after what I did, purchasing the store. In spite, he looked up my name, trying to dig up dirt on me, which technically he successfully did. Just for context, the firearms license removal request is something that the LSPD or the Sheriff's Department put in after somebody has been charged with a certain crime involving a weapon, to remove that person's weapon license. So, Detective Fares found that with my name on it, and then he, being at the store, confronted me about it, asked me what I knew about it. I didn't feel like explaining it there. So then what he said to me was, let me try to think of what he said. He said something along the lines of, you know, can you explain this? And I, as I said, didn't want to explain it there and then. So he then proceeded to say, good luck with your career, Sergeant. I'm sure you'll have a fun time explaining this. Which at that point I kind of knew what was coming. But for context of why that firearms license removal request was made for me, about just under 2.5 years ago, regretfully, I was coerced into participating in the robbery of a store by a very manipulative person who I knew at the time. In all honesty, I didn't know what I was getting into, and during the robbery, I realized what I was doing, like what I was actually participating in, and given how wrong it was, I gave myself up and handed myself over to the authorities that responded, which was SD at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what the firearms license removal request was for, and that's what he dug up on me in spite and in,
Gotcha.
trying to ruin me. So moving on a couple of months from that, after I got charged with that, apparently I was told there was a glitch in the LSPD database, where a few records were wiped, and mine was one of them. So that meant that that charge that I received was not there at the time that I applied to become an officer within the LSPD. But a couple of months after I got that charge, anyway, I really started to make something of myself because I had been working in the Bayview Auto Centre for a couple of months, and I was very happy where I was. But then later on that year, in May 2020, I applied to become an officer within the LSPD for the sole purpose of correcting the mistake that I made in that store that day that I was charged with that. And I decided to dedicate my life to protecting and serving the citizens of Los Santos, which is the motto of the LSPD: protect and serve. I had built up a very strong rapport with, I think, honestly, all of the members of the LSPD, all the ones that had left during my time there, all the ones that I've joined. Every single person I made it my business to gain their respect and be as nice of a person that I possibly could, along with being the best officer that I could possibly be for the city of Los Santos. I had spent 1 year and 7 months of my life dedicating my life to being the best person that I could be to correct the mistake for robbing that store. And honestly, I think in my own personal opinion, with the charge not being a violent crime that I committed, I didn't commit a violent crime, I didn't harm anybody. I feel that the time that I had dedicated to protecting and serving the city would have far outweighed the crime that I actually committed back then, about 2.5 years ago. However, Detective Tavares did not see it that way. If I'm going to be honest, I saw him as an actual friend, somebody that I could trust. On many occasions during our time in the LSPD working together, he had saved my life multiple times. I'd saved his. I considered him to actually be a close friend. But then, the day I purchased that store is the day that I realized that Guillermo Tavares is not someone you can trust, no matter how much you feel like you can. He had the capability that when we had each other's backs on so many occasions, he had the capability to turn around, put a knife through mine, without a single ounce of regret. And after all the hard work that I put into fixing that stupid mistake I made in that store, Tavares just decided to ruin my life for the sole reason that he didn't get what he wanted that day that I bought that store. That's pretty much the whole story anyway.
We pulled up your application for the LSPD, and it dates back to May 8th, 2020. You were hired and then given a certificate that stated that you, Gary Taylor, had met all the guidelines and shown satisfactory performances in the field as an applicant. You were then promoted. Robert Reynolds approved your application, and Desi Bala issued the certificate. I know this was a long, long time ago, but do you remember there being any issues with your application at that time?
No, none at all. It was a perfectly normal application process, given the fact that the LSPD database had that glitch which wiped my record of literally just a few speeding tickets and that charge. Once they did a background check on me, once they vetted me, they didn't see that charge, so that's why that went so smoothly and why it was just a normal application process. So that there was no complications that were out of the ordinary from their point of view,
Gotcha. Right. So we also did a little bit of research, and we found out that Officer Tavares is an official of the Property and Housing Division of the San Andreas State Government. If he did this to you as an act of revenge for missing out on a property, do you think he could potentially do this to applicants of this government program? Other applicants?
Well, if I'm going to be honest, I didn't know he was in that position. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean, if he could do this to me, he could do it for a lot less, Sanjay, if I'm going to be completely honest. Like, somebody who, before I bought that store, I think he would consider me a close friend because I backed him up when nobody else would. So I honestly, I think he would consider me to be a close friend. For someone he doesn't even like, I'm sure he would do that, no problem. Like if he didn't like a person who applied to own a certain property, he would deny it for the sole reason that he doesn't like them, you know, or any other reason that he doesn't want them to have a property that isn't within their regulations.
Gotcha.
Yeah, honestly,
So
I didn't know he was even in that position. That is shocking.
yeah, well, some of us just found out today as well. Are there
Even me.
any LSPD protocols in place against using department information for personal gain? If so, why did Tavares not face any discipline for his actions?
Well, the main policies that they have in place is that you can't give out personal information from the MDC. So let's say, Sanjay, if you were to come to Mission Row and ask for somebody's phone number,
Mm.
we cannot provide that to you without that person's permission, right? However, what Tavares did technically wasn't. Um, he didn't give out any information to the public about me or anything like that. While I do fully believe that it was for personal gain and ruining my life, I don't think from the LSPD side they could really pin that on him for the reason that he looked up my name on the government website. Um, I couldn't prove that was his intent, and neither could they. So, well, I do believe it. Can't really prove it.
Gotcha. So Deputy Chief of Police Felipe Sanchez filed your termination. Were you able to ask him why it took the LSPD 2 years to find a mistake in their paperwork? And will Desi Bala and Robert Reynolds, if they're still employed, be held liable for their mistake?
Um, yeah, the reason why it took well, a year and 7 months was just because it wasn't on the MDC. I suppose at the time when I applied to become an officer, checking the government website for those type of posts, such as firearms license removal requests, it wasn't really like still isn't a standard. For them to check that, they really only, as far as I know, all they really do is check the MDC and check the charges, and just do a normal background check, such as you would, for anybody who applies to work here. Um, Given my situation, I'm sure it'll be put into place where they'll, look up somebody's name to do a background check on the government website, just in case anything was to go amiss, as it did with me. But if I'm going to be honest, I have nothing to hold against Desi Bala and Robert Reynolds. It was a simple mistake on their part that led to no repercussions, no bad results, given the fact that I gave my all to that department. It's not like they let some sort of filthy criminal through and work for the department. It was they let someone through, although it was by mistake. They let someone through who genuinely wanted to fix what they did.
Right.
Yeah. Tavares is not what the LSPD represents. He is absolutely not what the LSPD represents. The motto of the LSPD, as I've stated already, is to protect and serve. Tavares does not protect and he does not serve. On numerous occasions, he has saved my life. However, he does not care for the civilians of the city. On one occasion, he let he refused to give somebody BLS just because Metro was there on scene. Tavares literally was asked to help somebody provide BLS, which he refused to do. For what reason, I don't know. So he made the conscious decision to possibly assist somebody in dying. I thought that was just disgraceful. However, the main cause of concern that I want the citizens of Los Santos to know is that if you are being arrested and charged by Guillermo Tavares, expect as much time as possible in prison. He places every single charge that is appropriate to place on someone who has committed numerous. For example, if somebody is recklessly operating their vehicle, I'm going to go into a bit of detail here. If somebody is recklessly operating their vehicle, that means that they are breaking multiple road laws, okay? So if they're failing to maintain lane, speeding excessively, and maybe they did a U-turn or something like that, that would count as reckless operation. So you'd only get the one charge, reckless operation, for doing for breaking those three traffic laws. Guillermo Tavares is the type of person that will place reckless operation and then the additional citations for what that reckless operation was chosen for anyway. So if you fail to maintain lane, sped, and did an illegal U-turn, he would place reckless operation for all three of those and then give you those three anyway. It is unbelievably disgraceful. He wants to put people in prison for as long as possible, which is not what the LSPD is meant for. Honestly, he's a detective, but he's the worst officer I've ever met. I'm not going to lie to you.
Gotcha. Well, Gary, I just want to say thank you so much for your time today. We're so sorry this happened to you, but we're honored to get to be able to tell your story. In addition, thank you so much for all of your service with LSPD and protecting Los Santos.
Thank you for letting me explain myself. And just one final note that I want to say. I am not a bad person, no matter how Detective Tavares is going to, make me look. He's been calling me a snake to the members of the police department, members that I have basically become family with within Metro. But he's making me seem like a criminal. I am not a criminal. And that's all I wanted to say. Because at the moment I am entirely embarrassed to even leave my own home.
Very sorry to hear that, Gary, and we here at Weasel definitely believe that you are a hero of the city.